Welcome back to the Mother-Daughter Disney podcast. It's so great to be back already with our next podcast episode. Today we are going to be doing some more Disney history. So last year we did an episode where we both talked about our top things that we missed from Disney's past. And when we were doing that episode, we had a lot of fun. And we thought it would be fun to dive into deeper of some of the things that we missed from Disney's past. And one of the things that I talked about was DisneyQuest. Mm-hmm. So in our first installment of this type of series, we did Pleasure Island, and now we'll do DisneyQuest. So I will put my sources in the description below. I learned so much about DisneyQuest that I had no idea.
Okay.
So we did go to Disney. I went to DisneyQuest once, and my brother really loved DisneyQuest. Mm-hmm. He went a couple times, right?
He went back. Yes, yeah. When he was older, he can go back in by himself. He went in by himself.
So he went a few more times than I did. And I was just telling my mom, I sadly don't have many memories of DisneyQuest when we were there. I will talk about the few memories I do have when we were in DisneyQuest. But for the most part, I think I was a bit young when we went. So a lot of it has kind of faded over time. Right. But I do have a few distinct memories, though. So we did go to DisneyQuest. I do remember seeing DisneyQuest, obviously, in what is now Disney Springs. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we'll just jump right into it. A lot of interesting things going on with DisneyQuest. So some background. DisneyQuest was a chain of indoor interactive theme parks operated by the Disney Regional Entertainment subsidiary of Walt Disney Parks and Resorts. The Disney Regional Entertainment no longer exists. It has been absorbed fully into Walt Disney Parks and Resorts. The project was designed for the Disney brand to reach populations that may not have had the chance to travel to the theme park in like Walt Disney World or in Disneyland. And it was meant to target large cities and urban areas. Sega had tested these types of entertainment centers in Japan, and they were relatively successful. And at the time of when this was opening in the 90s, places like Dave & Buster's were also being quite successful. Mm-hmm. So Disney kind of had the idea that maybe this could be successful too. Had the project continued, Disney had plans to construct locations in many other major cities like Philadelphia and Baltimore. However, only 2 locations were ever built, the one in Walt Disney World in Disney Springs and a much shorter-lived one in Chicago, Illinois. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's jump through the overall history. So again, I may be missing things. Again, I'm taking this from sources. Mm-hmm. So, take this for what you will, for what you care. All right, opening on June 19th, 1998, it was part of a major expansion of downtown Disney. And again, now today, this is Disney Springs on the downtown Disney West Side. At the time in the 90s, virtual reality was becoming more and more popular and something that people were quite interested in, like the virtual reality games. Disney did very little marketing for DisneyQuest, despite that this project was the flagship project for the Disney Regional Entertainment subsidiary. There wasn't much for it. There's a couple press releases. Michael Eisner at the time made a few statements about what it was going to be. But other than that, a lot of people were quite curious what this was going to be. Although despite the little and confusing marketing, it was still successful in bringing people in. It was a 5-story building with 100,000 square feet, and the no window design was purposely designed that way. So it was mysterious when you looked at that building of like what was in that building. One of the original concept arts for the building had it connected with a monorail, which I thought was kind of crazy. Oh, wow. Where was that monorail coming from?
I know.
Who knows?
Where was it going?
That's what I was saying. I was like, okay. Disney Springs isn't really close to the monorail system at all. No. So despite high numbers and good reviews of the DisneyQuest in downtown Disney at the time, the Disney Regional Entertainment didn't actually consider it a success because Disney World had a captive audience. They would have expected it to be much more successful than it was. And the real test was really going to be the DisneyQuest in Chicago. So, all right, the first DisneyQuest outside of Disney World opening Chicago on June 16th, 1999. Chicago was picked because of its region and size as a city. So region being that it wasn't really close to Florida or California, and it was in the north. So it was kind of like a region between two that Disney hadn't really tapped into yet. Disney hosted a whole TV special to announce its opening, complete with a flying Buzz Lightyear and a fireworks. Wow. Like they literally had all the Toy Story characters like flying throughout the streets of Chicago. Like the video was crazy when I was watching. Wow. I was just like, wow, this is wild.
Okay.
And a whole firework display too. Mm-hmm. They also put a whole like curtain sort of around the entire building, so they released it at the same time, so people would see the building all at the same time. This one was slightly smaller than the Disney one at 90,000 square feet, meaning that it had it's like some of the stations for the games had fewer like game stations just because it's a bit smaller. And then Disney at the time really wanted this DisneyQuest to be the Magic Kingdom of the Midwest. While the people were still very excited for a Disney themed experience coming to them, experts and critics were quite skeptical of DisneyQuest in Chicago. They didn't think Disney would make their return on investment because they thought, one, the building looked very out of place in downtown Chicago. The building looked exactly the same as the one in downtown Disney. Mm-hmm. So when you see this 5-story building in the middle of like skyscrapers in Chicago,
yeah, it
did look a bit odd, a bit strange. So that was the first thing. Second, by the late 90s, because again, by the time they developed this concept, it was the early 90s. By the time it was built, it was the late 90s. So by the time the late 90s happened, the rise of at-home video games and consoles meant that people were playing more video games in their own homes rather than going to arcades, building. For instance. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting too, because I mean, like I feel like the Game Boy Advance had been around for a while now at that point. But again, like at that point, then you kind of had all the PlayStations PlayStations, the Xboxes, things like that were coming home where you could play more video games at home. So this also meant that locals would not become regulars here. They'd have to really rely on tourists, which was not really a strategic way to collect revenue in Chicago at the time. It was estimated that Disney would need 3 million guests a year for DisneyQuest Chicago to be successful. But this would have been virtually impossible. I don't really know who this person was, but someone in the Chicago Tribune was like, impossible. The average length of stay for guests was 2.5 to 3 hours, meaning that that DisneyQuest Chicago would have to be open 17 hours a day, every day of the year, and be at max capacity the entire time for it to be successful. And that simply just wasn't going to happen.
No.
So Disney had originally, again, before it started going downhill, so to speak, they had projected 30 locations around the US, which is crazy to think how large they really thought this project was going to be. On December 9th, 1998, the Disney Regional Experience announced Philadelphia as the next new location. The location was selected and supplies were ordered. And again, this was before Chicago had even opened yet. However, delays in ordering supplies had pushed the project back to 2002. A DisneyQuest at Disneyland Resort in California was also was in the planning stage, but it never got past the planning stage though either. Disney also announced another location to be built in downtown Toronto, and that was also canceled. And the Chicago location permanently closed on September 4th, 2001 after 2 years and 3 months in operating. This was due to low visitor numbers as well as other broader issues, is what Wikipedia said. Because at first, it wasn't generating enough income for Disney to consider it a success. They were also diverting too much money into the DisneyQuest project where they could have been diverting that money into other projects that could have been more profitable. People were complaining that the lines were long in the Chicago location, and $16 for 2.5 hours of games was too expensive for people at the time in the 90s. Even now, that's kind of expensive.
It was even more than that in Disney World.
Yeah. Also, people were saying that it wasn't really delivering the Disney magic that the theme parks did, which I would probably agree with. You're not going to get the same feel in an arcade than you're going to get in Magic Kingdom, no matter what. And they said while the DisneyQuest, the building, fit in fine with downtown Disney, that people liked it. In Chicago, it looked more cold and corporate rather than warm and colorful. So people didn't really love the way it looked in the Chicago area. So after the failure of DisneyQuest Chicago, the DisneyQuest project was officially brought to an end. The construction that had begun in Philadelphia was scrapped, leaving a giant hole in its place for several years. And straight up, Disney just abandoned this in the middle of construction. When you look at the photo, it's just a big hole in the ground. Okay. Locals called it the Disney hole because it was a literal hole. Now the hole has since been filled and has become a parking lot. We have walked past this parking lot. Now that I know this parking lot was supposed to be DisneyQuest, I am like, that is crazy to me because I live in Philadelphia. So if you live in Philadelphia, it's on a Market Street across from the Fashion District between 8th Street and 9th Street on Market Street. So that's where it would have been. So that parking lot was supposed to be DisneyQuest.
So they still own, I assume they still own the property.
They don't know. So Disney abandoned the project.
They just
the property
abandoned
got
the whole
over.
thing.
Yeah.
So they just sold it.
So someone else bought it and they turned
just
it into a parking lot.
Okay.
Yep. So now it's just a parking lot, and it has been a parking lot to this day for over 20 years.
Okay.
So after the closure of the Chicago location, Disney Regional Entertainment turned control over back to Walt Disney World Parks and Resorts, and they were basically just absorbed into the parks and resorts. On June 30th, 2015, Disney officials announced that the Walt Disney World location would close in 2016 as part of a redevelopment of downtown Disney into Disney Springs. So again, that's kind of when downtown Disney became Disney Springs. Any workers who were working DisneyQuest at the time, they were just moved to other locations, which hopefully that is what happened, that they weren't just laid off. They just were able to get jobs elsewhere in Disney.
Redistributed, yeah.
In November 2016, Disney officials announced that DisneyQuest would remain open for the remainder of the year and into 2017 with no definitive closing date. But then on January 30th, 2017, the Disney parks announced that DisneyQuest would officially close on July 2nd, 2017, so that work on the NBA Experience attraction could begin. The property was then, set to start to be redeveloped into the NBA Experience. And yes, Disney's final day of operation was on July 2nd, 2017, and it was demolished a few months later. So in its replacement, the NBA Experience officially opened on August 12th, 2019. However, because it kind of opened right before the pandemic it basically closed almost immediately, which is kind of sad. And it did say that the guest actors for this did get laid off, which is a bit sad. But again, a lot of Disney cast members were laid off during COVID. And then on August 16th, 2021, so just 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now, it's 2024, Disney announced that the venue would not reopen, but there has been no replacement necessarily yet.
That building's still empty?
I think so,
I guess the brewery opened up next door.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what's being put in there as of right now. Okay. I think there are plans now, but when I was looking this up online, I didn't see anything. What it's going to be. All right, so let's go back to the design and layout of the DisneyQuest building. So all the locations were going to be similar in layout and attractions, and the idea behind this was that they could basically rebuild the same thing multiple times and then just shove it into new locations. It would be financially easy for them to just keep replicating the same idea, and that's why DisneyQuest Chicago looked exactly the same as DisneyQuest.
Right, because they didn't want to start changing for each city. Yeah. So, okay, I can see that.
Everything was based on that modular design, which again makes sense because they were planning to put this in 30 cities, which is wild. Originally, the idea was that no attraction would go unchanged for more more than 2 or 3 years. However, Disney only ever updated one game once, and they never changed anything else.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Only one game ever. In the Florida one, there's a Disney version of like Hercules, which we'll talk about the games in a second, was replaced with Pirates of the Caribbean, Battle for Buccaneer Gold. That was the only game that was ever updated and replaced. They never did anything else. They did add a few small things, like when Wreck-It Ralph came out, they added a few like arcade games for Wreck-It Ralph, but that was kind of it. Nothing really crazy changed.
I think at that point they probably knew they were having problems.
Yeah. The building itself was 5 floors. On the ground floor was that main lobby that you kind of go into. It was decorated very ornately with gold busts and like a faux sky. The elevator was called a Cyberlator and would take you to Ventureport. In the ride on Cyberlator, you'd be greeted by Genie from Aladdin and a little video explaining how you were being transported to a new location entirely. Again, the no windows thing kind of contributed to that, like you were in a whole different world. There were 3 main food options in DisneyQuest. There was Food Quest, Wonderland Cafe, and the Cheesecake Factory Express, which I did not know that. I thought that was crazy. Yeah. Apparently this was exclusive to DisneyQuest and there was the only one of its kind. And I don't wonder if to this day is still the only one of its kind, but it then sadly closed in 2008. So I think when we went, I think it was closed.
It was closed because I remember there was no Cheesecake Factory or anything.
Yeah, it closed
there.
In 2008.
And I remember the food was not that good.
Yeah, I mean, like I would not imagine in that building the food was going to be great.
What we had was not that good,
yeah,
I remember.
So we probably went to either Food Quest or Wonderland Cafe.
We were kind of just there, so we ate something. Yeah.
All right, let's go to the attractions. The attractions were split into like 4 sections, sort of. There was Explore Zone, Create Zone, Score Zone, and Replay Zone. So that's kind of the different zones. I kind of separate that with what floor they're on, but then I was looking at a map of DisneyQuest, and I feel like that was wrong that I found on like the wiki, like the Disney wiki. So I'm just going to go through the rides. I don't really know exactly what floor they're on or which zone they were in.
At this point, they're gone anyway.
Yeah, it's fine. All right, so first up, we had Pirates of the Caribbean, Battle for Buccaneer Gold. This was you'd be manning a pirate ship and you destroy other ships and sea monsters. And a fortress to collect gold. One of the players would captain the ship by steering and controlling the throttle, while the others would have like gunners and control the cannons. This game is the setup for Toy Story Mania down the line, since it used very similar technology as Toy Story Mania.
I remember that one.
Which I thought was very interesting.
That's the only thing I remember.
This was like the newest game that they had added at the time that replaced the Hercules game, which we'll get to. That's like one of the former attractions. You were kind of in the little room that with like 3 walls around you. So you were in your little boat with the 3 walls and you kind of see like the 3D things kind of around you. That's sort of what it looked like. Next up was the virtual jungle cruise. You would paddle an inflatable raft. Literally there was an inflatable raft you would sit on.
That one too. Okay.
And you'd hold a real paddle, like a legit paddle. And as you would make your way down this prehistoric river avoiding dinosaurs and you'd be getting sprayed with water, you'd be trying to help Wayne Szalinski's time machine to find a way back to the present. I think he like dropped something, you're like trying to go after it or something like that. Yeah, but you're sitting on like a legit raft and it looked kind of funny. And again, same thing, like the 3 kind of like walls around you to make up like the 3D experience. There was Cyberspace Mountain. This is where guests would design a roller coaster on a design kiosk and then they would sit in like a little thing that would kind of like mimic the ride that they were on. You could also do a pre-built coaster as well. And then this was hosted by Bill Nye the Science Guy, who refers to himself as Bill Nye the Coaster Guy in the game. There was Aladdin's Magic Carpet Ride. Players would wear like a kind of a virtual reality type helmet thing and you sort of sit on a motorcycle type thing, but you'd be like sitting on the magic carpet and you go through Agrabah. You'd be collecting gems to find the genie who is hidden away in the Cave of Wonders. I think you're supposed to like be like helping the genie get out or something like that. Okay. I remember. This is the only game I truly remember playing.
I remember that?
I remember playing it specifically because I remember the controls were not good. I remember I was struggling so hard to like get the carpet to move and stuff like that. It was like really difficult to play. And I know too, I was a child at the time, so that could have contributed to the fact that I didn't really have fun playing this game because I didn't think it was like, it didn't like work properly for what I thought it was going to do. And also I think the helmet was too big for me because again, I was a kid. So I think I just found the whole thing uncomfortable. But this is the only one I remember because I remember sitting like going through Agrabah on like the magic carpet. Like I remember that visual. There was the Animation Academy. This was kind of regular sessions throughout the day where they kind of teach you how to draw, you know, so they have that now in, you know, all over Disney World. They do like the little drawing lessons. This one was actually on a light pen with a computer screen. So you would print out your design afterwards. There was Sid's Create a Toy. This was featuring Evil Sid from Toy Story. You can create like a custom toy and then you can actually buy that toy later in the day if you wanted. There's Living Eagles. This was an interactive touchscreen program. Guests would be able to play various games on like, you know, with different backgrounds. And you could kind of like print out your little design later if you wanted to as well. And there's also Radio Disney Song Maker. And you can create your own song and you can also purchase that later as well. The Mighty Ducks Pinball Slam. This was a big game at the time. This was based on the Disney afternoon cartoon. And players, you would be like, become the pinball. Like you are the pinball in this gigantic projected like pinball kind of game. And you'd be rocking your like duck back and forth to kind of like get around the game in itself. It'd be up to 12 players at a time to control and, you know, the corresponding like pinball things. And you'd be trying to collect the most points as possible. Apparently people really love this game from what I saw online. There was like a a big hit. So there's also Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blaster. This was a players you would board bumper cars, literal bumper cars, and you would have like one person would be driving and the other person would have the little gun, and you like hit actual little dodgeballs, like foam balls, at the other players in their bumper cars.
Oh, I remember watching that. Okay, yes.
And then the asteroids, I would say, you know, the foam balls, they'd be sucked up into the cabin where other players could like load up their own like things and hit other cars. And if you hit the correct spot, the car may spin around uncontrollably for about 10 seconds. And they say usually there were 2 cars, in the player. And they said it was possible for one person to pilot and shoot the balls at the same time if they were like coordinated enough, and probably if they were like an adult, not a child, probably couldn't do it. Funny enough, I don't really remember that one too much. I remember it enough to the point I remember sitting in a car with Luke and us spinning around uncontrollably. That's what I remember the most about that.
I remember the both of you being in the car. Okay,
Luke obviously had been driving, so I must have been shooting the foam balls at other people. But yeah, all right. Then there's Ride the Comics 4. This is when players again would wear like a virtual reality type helmet, and you would enter a comic book world. Players would battle with supervillains using a laser sword. This could be up to 6 players at a time, so you'd literally see like the people in front of you again have your little laser sword. There was Invasion, an extraterrestrial alien encounter. This was like the president of the United States was helping you like fight aliens, or like was asking you to help him fight aliens. So 4 players could ride inside like a rescue vehicle. You'd be saving astronauts, you'd be saving like, you know, civilians, you'd be shooting at enemy aliens. And this is actually it later inspired another attraction at Magic Kingdom, which is now also since closed, which I think is kind of funny. So all right, the removed attractions. There were 3 attractions that were removed from DisneyQuest in Florida. The very first one was open for literally 1 year, and this was the Corkscrew Cave of Wonder slide. This was a 150 feet slide that guests took from the 3rd floor to the 1st floor. Oh, wow. It closed permanently after that first year, and it never reopened, which I think is really funny.
Had a problem with it.
Yeah, clearly the slide was not safe, I guess, or too long or something. I don't know. The next was the Treasure of Incus. This is where players would drive like a small remote control car like around a maze, and you'd be searching for like the treasure. And so along the wall there was like all like the little steering things, and like, they kind of had something similar to it by the Jungle Cruise.
By the Jungle Cruise, that's what I'm thinking,
like
with
little
the
boats where you can kind of steer the little boats. The floor of the room was a clear plastic, and you see the trucks driving around. And then that was the other thing too. So one person would steer the car, and another person would be looking at the car, but the person steering couldn't see the car, so you'd have to rely on like your
person
mate
giving you directions
to tell you where to be steering the car. So it was like a little harder. So this attraction was plagued with interference with emerging technologies. Once cell phones became a thing, the radio between the car and the steering wheel
breaking it up
no longer worked. And that's actually why they closed it. They also closed it because after one incident, one of the vehicles caught fire.
Oh my God.
When the vehicle caught fire and you're in a building with no windows and no doors to the outside world, and the only mode of transportation is a fake elevator that's supposed to be transferring to a different location, it was not safe. So they closed it down. They did eventually clear, I think, this area out, and then it became it'll be seen adjacent to, it was removed. And then when the floor was to cover, new games were added to the area, and then the area became completely jungle themed and became like the Let's Go Jungle games, which are kind of just like arcade games. Right. I forgot to mention there was a whole like regular arcade with like regular arcade games as well. Okay. I forget what that was called. Yeah, but there was like a regular arcade game as well. All right, and then there was also Magic Mirrors. This was also located part of Create Zone, and people could take photos of themselves and like edit their faces to look like cartoons. And then this was also closed. So this is also near the Disney's Hercules game as well. So Hercules in the Underworld was another closed game. Sorry, there's 4 removed attractions. Again, that one was replaced with the Pirates of the Caribbean game. So you'd have a joystick, and you basically kind of like fight Hades, you know, with a little joystick basically, and, you know, play that game. So that was kind of all the attractions. So, but yeah, so that was kind of like DisneyQuest, sort of like in a little nutshell, I would say. It is considered a big Disney failure, which is kind of sad if you think about it, but it makes sense why it did fail. I think it was never destined to do well. I can kind of tell
why it failed. But
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like, you're kind of in
opinion.
Yeah, I remember I told my mom the thing that I disliked the most about DisneyQuest was that it had no windows. It was creepy when you were inside. That there was no natural light.
Yeah, it was like you were closed off from everything. You were inside. There was no sun. There was no, you're in Florida, and now you're stuck inside.
And I remember it being dark.
Yes. It had a dark feel to it because you were inside, and they have all the games, so they kept the lighting low because you had to have all the special effects had to give you that effect.
Yeah. Okay. There were some other things I found too when I was watching one of the Defunct Lands videos that had to do with the politics with Michael Eisner and some other former Disney cast members who went over to Universal. I'm not going to include that in this video, but I would definitely recommend checking out that video if you're more interested in the ins and outs of the politics of the specific people who kind of ran this. But apparently that also had to do a little bit too with the failure of DisneyQuest as just like the politics of what was going on. They did do a funny thing saying how did they learn nothing from the opening of like Disney Club, who learned nothing from the opening of Euro Disneyland.
Well, you want I can give my opinion.
Yeah.
My opinion about this is that I think that they tried to open it because of the surge that they thought was going to be gaming.
Yeah, like especially especially that virtual reality type thing at the time.
They, like I said, they didn't realize that people were going to start moving it because the technology was going to start moving to the homes, that they didn't have to leave anywhere. Second thing I remember for me was that I had 2 kids, 2 different ages. So it's kind of tough to go in there.
Like me and my brother are 3 years apart.
Right.
So.
Luke could probably have been left alone through the building, but I'm not one of those parents that likes to say, okay, go ahead, I'll worry about it later. I followed you around from place to place. They had some places for parents to sit, so I'd sit and wait or whatever, but I followed you around mostly from place to place. So parents don't want to do that. They're on vacation. They do not want to spend a day in a dark building following their kids from arcade game to arcade game. The third thing is that we had it attached to our passes the first time we did it.
Oh, that was another thing too. When they were losing money, they were offering DisneyQuest passes with your passes as well.
Back then, we had annual passes because we had discounts. And because we had the annual passes, it was cheaper to get an annual pass for all of us than because what we were doing. And at the time, we didn't have a lot of money. I mean, we were traveling because my husband traveled and we had points on the airlines and whatever. So we didn't have a lot of money. It was expensive. So now you've got kids who are saying, okay, I want to go to DisneyQuest. I want to go to DisneyQuest. I want to go to DisneyQuest. If you don't spend all day there, it's a waste of money because you spend all that money to go in, and now in 2 hours you're walking out the door. You're like, what'd I spend all that money for? Yeah. You're in Disney. There's the parks. Parks were included in our passes and our tickets. Why would we want to spend more money to go to DisneyQuest and let our kids play arcades when we could just go to the Jersey Shore when we got home and take them to an arcade? So I think that all that converged.
Well, I think too, especially over time as well, because I'm sure when this opened in the late 90s, it was probably much more exciting than it was in the 2010s.
Right. Technology.
And it was one of those things too, when you look now at what the games look like, graphics in games like technology advances so quickly. And I think that's the hardest part about virtual reality is
they couldn't keep up.
The graphics in those games were going to be outdated so quickly. By the time they built everything, even by the time it launched, it was already going to be outdated. And I think that's the struggle with virtual reality arcades like that. And it's something I think Disney couldn't have predicted because people didn't know that was going to advance
because like I said, their
either.
technology did not keep up. So it wasn't like you were going to something that you couldn't get anyplace else.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, because now even like again in present day in 2024, you can buy a virtual reality headset at home and play at home, which is crazy to think about. But again, in mid 1990s, people couldn't do that. And again, Disney couldn't keep up. Disney couldn't have predicted in 10, 15 years how drastically that was going to change. So it makes sense when DisneyQuest did close. I know some people really love DisneyQuest and they did have a lot of fun. It was quite nostalgic to play these games. And I think the idea of a lot of these games is quite fun, like to be like in the Jungle Cruise raft and to like fly the carpet and in Aladdin.
But that's why I'm surprised it didn't make it better in a city where there wasn't the parks right next door.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, having the parks right next door, people are saying, I have a ticket to get into the park.
Someone said the long lines in Chicago was a problem. And I remember that too in Florida as well, that there were certain things I wanted to do, but the line was so long that I didn't want to do it. I remember my favorite thing in DisneyQuest was in the regular arcade, like not even like one of the other arcades. You can do this at other arcades. I've seen this machine before. You sit in this little thing and you pick like a roller coaster, you pick an adventure and it takes you on the adventure. And you just watch it happen and kind of moves you around. It's like you feel like you're going fast. It has like the fake wind and everything. To me, that was so fun. And that was just in the regular arcade. And I've seen that in other arcades now in present day as well. It wasn't like a Disney specific item. But that's also because that had no line in it. So it was like things that didn't have any lines was more appealing to a child than like waiting in line
to go
than
for
playing
2
a
minutes.
game and then me not really being good at the game because I was a bit too young for it, I think, at the time when I went. I don't know how old I was, but I will say too, I was also never a video game person growing up. I like my brother. I think that's why my brother loved it because my brother did love video games. He loved playing all the video games, the handheld games, the Xboxes, PlayStation, everything he loved.
He was also a little bigger and a little older, so he could handle them better.
And so he loved them and he had fun playing them, whereas I never really played video games growing up. I used to watch my brother play video games and I would play some video games like on, like I had Nintendo DS was the big thing I had growing up and I would play games on that. But even then I wasn't playing like these types, like I was playing like Nintendogs and it's like maybe Guitar Hero and like, like Sims, so, things like that. I wasn't playing like these games where you really actually had objectives to do. I had, just like the fun, easy games, which I know is very stereotypical, like boring girl in that sense, but it was the truth though. I was never a big video game person. So for me to wait in these long lines and then play these video games that I just couldn't play, I was like, well, this is not a very fun day for me here in Disney World now, is it? So
that's why we didn't go. I think we went back. I think I let Luke go back in with his friend when we were there for like half a day, and that was about it.
Yeah, he went back in 2 years before it closed. I think in 2012, I think was the last time we went to it. And I remember when they announced it was going to close in 2014, he was very sad that that he heard it was closing because he really liked it.
Yeah, he would have liked to have gone back.
But it just wasn't a successful project. It was all, although not that the NBA experience was much more successful.
No, that unfortunately that didn't do very well.
Yeah, so I don't know. I wonder what they're going to put in that space next and what it could be turned into. I think they did say something was going to be put into here. Let me look it up.
Be nice if there was something exciting going in there, something new.
Yeah, no, so as of right now, there's nothing official that's going to be replacing it. Yes, there were rumors that maybe like a Star Wars virtual reality would replace it, but this was before the Galactic Star Cruiser even opened.
Opened and failed.
So, yeah, there's nothing official online that says that something is going to replace it as of right now. I do know that the NBA experience has been successful in other cities. That was why Disney brought it to Disney Springs, but just didn't work out for them in their area. So it is what it is. And I do agree with my mom. I think it's very hard to put something like large like that, like some big arcade, some big experience right next to Disney World, because tourists who are going down aren't going to do that. They're going to be spending their time in Disney World. So at that point, you're kind of relying on the locals to come and do stuff like that on a regular basis, or have families who are staying like extended periods of time in Disney World. But at that point, the numbers are just going to be way lower. I think it's just a bit trickier. So not really sure what they'll do with it next though. But long live DisneyQuest.
All right. Well,
you will be in our memories forever.
I don't miss it.
Yeah, I will say I don't necessarily miss it either, but again, I just didn't have fun, in the game. I still think that would have been wild if there was one in Philadelphia. I wonder if they did open that one in Philadelphia in like 2002, if we would have gone, since we lived so close to Philadelphia.
We close. We could have. We were at
I
that
feel like
point.
maybe if it did open, maybe we would have gone at least once when we were kids or something like that.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't meant to
knows?
be. All right, well, transitioning to just a little bit of Disney news now. We are pre-recording this episode, so if any Disney news has come out recently, I apologize. We're not going to talk about it. The only thing I was going to bring up was that as of recording this, Disney Genie Plus sold out for the first time in Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom on December 28th. So it was $35 for Hollywood Studios, $29 for Animal Kingdom. And at the time, Magic Kingdom, I think, was $39, and so was the Park Hoppers, $39. And I believe Epcot at the time was like $32 or something like that. Epcot
My
was a little bit
opinion
less.
about that too.
Yeah.
My opinion is that they won.
Oh, yeah.
They won on me.
No, for sure.
We have decided that if we're going to go, we have to get it. I mean, if you want to do the Disney experience, you better just be ready to spend extra money, because otherwise you're going to be miserable.
Like, I know by the time you're listening to this, it's mid-January when this episode comes out, but the week between Christmas and New Year's was a crazy week in Disney for sure. I was looking at those videos that people were posting, the lines, like the line for people to go through security at all the parks, all the lines, all the crowds was quite high. So yeah, I agree with my mom. I'm not surprised that they sold out, because I think people went a couple of days with really crowded days in the parks.
I give up.
Yep, and they were like, we're getting Genie Plus, and we're going to skip some of these lines now. So yes, I'm not surprised, but it is wild though if you think about it.
Yep,
They're definitely making money on Genie Plus for sure. That and paper attraction for Lightning Lanes and stuff.
Because if you want to at least have a little bit of experience, then you do it, and then you just wing it the rest of the time. But at least you get one or two, or maybe even three rides in that you can actually say my money's worth is that I at least got to.
That's kind of how we saw Genie Plus. We were saying it's like, all right, we're going to pay for it, and like we're using this for like one or two specific rides. If we can get those two specific rides on this money, then it's worth it.
And then you go do everything else, and then just take your chances. But
yeah, for sure.
They won, because I was one of those people that kept saying, I'm not giving them any more money. I mean, this is ridiculous. They're getting more and more expensive. There's less and less they're offering. No, I'm not doing it. No, I'm not doing it. I got to tell you, the last trip, they won.
The last trip we did use Genie Plus a lot.
By the end of the week,
recap on that trip, if you want to listen to it.
By the end of the week, we said, I said, they won. Go ahead, do it.
And our next trip when we go in May, we're
doing
it again.
We're going to plan
Maybe
it.
not every single park, but definitely for Magic Kingdom, I think we're going to.
In my case, we luck out because Dad's going to be working a couple of the days, so it's just me and you. So we're not paying for
it's
but I don't know how people with 3 and 4 kids go in here and pay all this money.
Hundreds more dollars to
It's a lot of money. It really is a lot of money.
Yeah, definitely wild. So, but I just thought I'd bring that up just because it was monumental for Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom to sell out. And you know what people want to go on? It's that Slinky Dog Dash.
I know, and we have not been on it yet. I have no want to go on it.
I've been on it once.
First of all, by the time I get into Toy Story Land, it's hot. It's no shade, no crowded, lots of kids, lots of stuff going on. I'm like, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, the only ride I haven't been on in Hollywood Studios, I think, is Alien Swirling Saucers, but I never really go on any
we never
ride.
go on the things that spin you around.
Yeah, I never
like
go
that.
to any rides that spin around
Teacups
like
or
that.
swirling saucers.
Yeah, the only thing I'll sometimes go on is like Dumbo or like Magic, the Magic Carpets that go in a circle. I think that those are kind of fun. Or like the carousel. I do love carousels. I do think carousels are very fun. Yeah, but we don't do Alien Swirling Saucers. We've never been on the ride. I've never even
teacups.
We've never even really walked past it because we never go back to the back of Toy Story.
Oh yeah,
Land.
never.
It connects to Galaxy's Edge. Only once or twice I think I've walked past it.
We've walked through it, and I don't even think I noticed them.
But even then, though, we just aren't Alien Swirling Saucer people. So, all right, now we transition into some Disney birthdays. So, a happy birthday on January 12th to Mater from Cars. So, so happy birthday, Mater, January 12th, our Capricorn King. And that's the only Disney birthday. And that transitions to our last segment of the podcast, which is our Disney memory. So do you have a Disney memory for today's podcast?
Disney memory for DisneyQuest. The only thing I remember is sitting on a bench waiting. Whenever all of Amanda was talking, I said I remembered one or two of the rides. The rest of it was I sat there all day and watched them to make sure that they did not go out the building.
Was Dad at work that day or something? That's why he didn't
I don't know where he was that day.
I remember
he may have gone golfing.
Oh, maybe
he was out golfing. Because when we do go down there, Joe
Uh-huh.
brings his clubs because we have friends down there and we've always had other people around when we're down there a lot of times. So they will meet up and go golfing. So he may have been out golfing that day and we decided, okay, if you're going to golf, then I'll take the kids to DisneyQuest.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I remember my dad wasn't there that day.
No, he wasn't.
But I was also like,
it wasn't
why
worth it to
he
pay
with
for him.
us?
Yeah, well, he had it connected to his ticket too, probably. But yeah, it was not worth it for both of us to sit around.
Yeah, and again, I only ever went that one time because then I didn't really care for it. And again, Luke really liked it, so he really wanted to go back. So he did go back.
When we went back
in
with
the
his
future.
friend, we had the tickets.
Yeah,
so
and he went back
in.
by himself with his friend. We didn't go in with him.
They were high school age, so they could do that.
Really
Yeah.
cared to go in again.
Right.
But yeah, long live R.I.P. DisneyQuest.
Oh, well.
Always in our memories.
What could you do? Okay.
So all right, thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast. Let us know what you want us to cover next for Disney history. So whether it be something we talked about in that first podcast episode or something else. I realize for Disney history, we've done 2 Disney Springs themed things. We did Pleasure Island and now we're doing DisneyQuest. I'll do something else in the parks next time for our Disney history. But yeah, but let us know, like, what do you want to cover from Disney's history that you're curious about learning more about? Again, I learned so much when I was doing the research for this because I knew nothing about DisneyQuest, apparently. I thought I knew more than I did, but I knew nothing about DisneyQuest.
Right.
So it was definitely interesting for me to do this podcast episode. Make sure you leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment down below. Did you go to DisneyQuest? Did you have fun when you went to DisneyQuest? Do you miss it? We will also have a dedicated Instagram post on our social media, Spaceship Earth Design. So let us know too in the comments on that Instagram post. Again, what did you think of DisneyQuest when you got to go to DisneyQuest? And do you miss it? And what do you want the NBA experience to turn into next?
Yeah,
What do you
that
think
would
it
be
could
interesting
be?
to know what people would think should go in there.
Yeah, because we already have Splitsville, which is the bowling alley, which
That
is
does
quite,
well.
Yeah, which is quite successful. They
I
already
tried
have
to get reservations there, couldn't do
Yes.
it.
They already have a movie theater as well, which is another popular indoor activity.
Right.
So I think I wonder what else they could do. I feel like it couldn't take up the whole building, but they could do like an indoor mini golf type of thing. Maybe I'm not really sure.
Oh yeah, we did that in Canada. We've been down there a couple of places. The one we did in Canada was the best.
Yeah, because there's lots of mini golf around the park, like around the resorts and like near the parks.
Yeah,
but it's all
not
outdoors.
an indoor one.
Yeah, it's
you
all
get
outdoors.
an indoor black light mini golf.
I feel like they could maybe do
think
like
you're right.
Yeah, like maybe two or three courses of indoor mini golf, or maybe you could pick like you're going to do maybe the classic Disney one, maybe the black white light one, maybe like a spooky, maybe a villains themed one.
Yeah, that would
or
be
something.
cool.
So each floor could maybe be like a different
Different
themed
one.
or something, and then you can go pick the theme.
Good
And
idea,
that would,
Amanda.
That would also have replayability too, because then if you do one, you'll go back next time to do a different floor with a different theme.
Yeah,
So
and
they could
most
do a few
people,
different themes.
people who go to play miniature golf usually like miniature golf.
Yeah,
so,
most people do.
And I like the indoor black light miniature golf. I
it
like
is
them better
fun.
than the outdoor ones.
And I think that's a good indoor activity as well. So if it's raining, you can go bowling, you can play mini golf, you can go to the movies. You have more things.
And mini
to
golf
do
is
in
something that
area.
any age can do and do okay at it.
Yeah, and still have fun. Like we
always have fun. I mean,
I'm in my late 20s. My partner's in his 30s. My parents are
in the 60s, and
we still play mini golf. It's still fun to do. So
no, that was very fun when we did it in Canada.
Yeah, so that was kind of what I was thinking that they maybe could turn it into. I don't know
Yes.
how much that would cost and what the return on investment would be, because mini golf is usually kind of cheap to play. So
I think we should
wonder.
contact Disney.
Right, we'll see.
We have an idea. Can
Well,
we be
if they turn it
partners?
into mini golf, you heard it here first. On the Mother
That's
Dog
right. Can
Disney
we be partners?
So I like my little
Good idea.
my $2
Yes.
royalty check.
Yes,
So-
good idea. Okay.
All right, thanks so much for listening, everyone, and yeah, we'll see you all real soon.
Okay, bye-bye.